Hello my fellow working class heroes, good day. I am Carlo and welcome to Carlo Excels. In this episode, we'll talk about the Minerva Intelligent Class Record Template. The class record template that is built from the ground up to help the 21st century teacher in dealing with this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous school year of 2022 to 2023. These are the objectives of this episode. First, we're gonna have an overview of the class record template, and then we're gonna talk about how to download the class record template, and then we talk about how to input data into the class record template, and then how to get printouts and data from the class record template. And lastly, we'll talk about how to adjust to changing school conditions using the class record template. Before anything else, if you're new to this channel, hello, this is Carlo Excels, a channel that is dedicated to teaching my fellow teachers here in the Philippines Microsoft Excel. Occasionally, I also create Microsoft Excel tools like this that will be helpful for my fellow teachers. Please like this video and share this video to your fellow teachers and drop a comment down below. It'll really help with the YouTube algorithm and help those who are searching for this to find this. Thank you. So what are the features of this class record template? First, this class record template is compliant to both DepEd Order 8 Series 2015 and DepEd Order 31 Series 2020. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how can this template be compliant to both the grading system of before distance education and during distance education? Well, I'll show you later what I mean by that. This class record template can be used by both public and private schools, for as long as the private schools use the calculation of grades as prescribed by DepEd. For private schools, especially those with autonomy status, this class record template can actually be used for subjects outside of the DepEd curriculum. So if your school has subjects that is not in the regular DepEd curriculum, you can still use this class record template. And for private schools who have ESE beneficiaries and senior high school voucher beneficiaries, this class record template is compliant to PAYAC monitoring guidelines. This class record template supports grades 1 to 12, from grade school to senior high school. This template supports changes in grading systems between quarters. In other words, in this template, it is possible to have, during the first quarter, the distance education grading system, and then during the second quarter and succeeding quarters, the face-to-face grading system. This template can handle up to 100 students per class in any combination of males and females. This class record template can handle up to 20 written works, 20 performance tasks, and 5 quarterly assessments per quarter. This template has automatic page formatting for easy printing. No more adding columns or rows, deleting columns or rows, making sure that everything fits. You just print. It all fits. This template has an individual student display feature, great for parent-teacher conferences or deliberations. This template has built-in statistical tools for all assessments, great for action research and year-end requirements. This template has a system that can handle transferees, whether transferred in or transferred out, and those who are no longer participating in school activities. This template has features that allow the teacher to adjust to changing or even extraordinary school conditions, so that exemptions, exam cancellations, and even allowances for students with special needs. This class record template is a Microsoft Excel template with no Visual Basic Code or even macros, and it is compatible with Microsoft Office versions as old as 2007 and above. This class record template is made to not be compatible with Google Sheets. It cannot be used online. You can only download it and use it offline. To download the Minerva class record template, please check the descriptions down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will find there a Google Drive link. Now, when you click the Google Drive link, you will see what's on the screen right now. And if you click this download button on the upper right corner of the screen, you'll be able to download the zip file, extract the zip file, and you will get the class record template. Now, even if you can already download the template, and I created the template to be as intuitive and as easy to use as possible, I implore you to please continue watching this video. The template has many hidden features that may not be readily apparent, and I suggest you watch this video so that you can take full advantage of those features. Now, let me state categorically that the Minerva class record template is free to download, distribute, and use. This template is made primarily, of course, for our school subject teachers so that we can spend less time on our class records and more time with our lessons and our students. For any admin level school personnel, if you think that this class record is right for you and for your school, please continue watching the video to check if it truly is right for you in your school. If you like it, please endorse it to your school teachers. Now, you don't even have to teach them how to use the class record because you can simply lead them to this YouTube channel so that I can teach them how to use the template. Now, even if this class record template is free to download, distribute, and use, my only request is please do not sell it. If you receive it to me from me for free, please give it to others for free as well. At the same time, when you give it to them for free, please do not edit any part of it before you give it to them. Please give it to them, please distribute it in its unedited form. Now, before I move on to finally demonstrating how to use the class record template, let me give a brief outline. First, I'm gonna show you how to use the template under normal conditions. And then after I show you what the template can do during normal conditions, I'm then gonna show you how to use the template during uncommon circumstances. Uncommon circumstances meaning they're still normal but they don't happen very often. These are during cases wherein there are transferred in students, transferred out students, and students who are no longer participating in school activities. Afterwards, I'm gonna show you how to use the template during extraordinary circumstances. For example, sudden changes in grading systems, student exemptions, and allowances for students with special needs. When you open the Minerva class record template for the very first time, this is the first thing that you see. You are currently in the first tab, which is the Gen Info tab. So you can see here on the lower left corner of the screen, we are currently in the Gen Info tab. So this is where we input our the initial details of our school and the initial details of our classes. So first off, you may want to enter the details according to the order that you see here on the screen. So let's start with the region first. Now, if you look at the cell for the region, it has a drop-down box. So please pick the region that your school belongs in. For example, let's pick in Region 1. Now, once you pick a region, the choices for the divisions for each region, the choices for the division will change depending on the region you select. For example, if you selected Region 1, these are the divisions for Region 1. If you select, for example, Region 7, for example, then these are the divisions for Region 7. So, I found this list of regions and divisions in DepEd's official website. And if in case that website is not updated, or if you belong to a region or a division that does not appear in the list, you can of course enter the divisions manually like so. So let's pick a region. At random, I am going to pick Region 4A, and then let's pick Division Antipolo City. Next, let's select our school year, as you can see here, school year 2022 to 2023, like so. Next, please enter your school name. So let's put in a fake school name. Let's call it YouTube University, University Basic Education Department, like so. Next, let's enter a school ID. So naturally, the school ID is a 6-digit number assigned to your school by the Department of Education upon registration. So you will notice that this template will not allow you to enter an invalid 6-digit school ID. So let's put in here a fake school ID. So 987654, 6 digits. Now for the next part, you're going to be asked to select the grade level. So the choices are from grade 1 all the way to grade 12. Please take note that this will affect the behavior of the template. So if you pick from grade 1 all the way to grade 10, for example, then you will see on the bottom part, the entries have now been filled up. So you're going to be asked to put in the assessment components percentages of first quarter all the way to fourth quarter. But if you select a senior high school grade level, for example, grade 12, you will notice that you're only going to be allowed to enter assessment components percentages of midterm and final term. At the same time, additional choices for semester and the subject category have appeared. So let's try first junior high school for this example. Then let's enter a section. Say for example, we belong to 10 matatag, like this. Next, let's enter a subject. Now, the subjects here are based on the curriculum guides of the Department of Education as found in their website. Now, I am aware that certain private schools have either English or Filipino versions of certain subjects. So you have here both the Filipino and English versions of Araling Panlipunan or Social Studies. Then you have here Edukasyon sa Pagpapakatao or Values Education, or Edukasyon sa Pantahanan at Pangkabuhayan or Technology and Livelihood Education. So just pick your subject. For this example, I'm going to pick Social Studies like this. Now, for the next part, the template is going to ask for the name of the teacher. So let's enter a fictional name here. Let's say Juan de la Cruz. And then it's going to ask for the name of the person who's going to eventually approve this class record template, whether it be your school head, your principal, your subject coordinator, or whatever. So let's enter here a fictional name. Let's say Juana de la Cruz. And Juana de la Cruz is the principal who is going to approve this class record later. For private schools who have ESC beneficiaries or senior high school voucher beneficiaries, this part is very important because according to PAYAC, in their monitoring guidelines, class records should have or should follow the two-signature rule. In other words, aside from the subject teacher, there should be somebody else who is inspecting and signing these class records. So this part is important. You should have your teacher and you should have somebody to approve it, both the name and the position. Now for the next part, you may have noticed that when I set my subject here, you will notice that the numbers on the right, there seem to be numbers here that change, alright? So what these are actually are the assessment components percentages according to DepEd Order 8 Series 2015, meaning these are the assessment component percentages before distance education, and these are the assessment components percentages during distance education. In other words, DepEd Order number 31, Series 2020. So if I select a subject here, you will see these assessment components percentages change. In fact, if you want to review these DepEd orders, you can simply click on these hyperlinks here, which will take you to copies of these DepEd orders. Now, please pay attention. This part is very, very important. Once you pick a subject here, and you see here, for example, I'm gonna pick mathematics, and you see here that the assessment components percentages on the right have changed. This doesn't mean that the assessment components percentages have already been set. You will have to set it manually. You set it on the spaces here below. So in other words, this part here is just a guide for you, and you have to set the assessment components percentages here below manually because different schools have different conditions as to when they are going to use the distance education component percentages and the before distance education component percentages. For example, it's very possible in your school that for the first quarter, you're going to have distance education. So therefore, for the first quarter, you're going to use the distance education grading system. So you have 50% written works for mathematics, 50% performance tasks, and then 0 for quarterly assessment. And then for the second quarter, you then shift to face-to-face education. So therefore, you use the regular face-to-face assessment components percentages. So you have here, starting the second quarter, 40, 40, 20. And then you're going to continue with 40, 40, 20 throughout the rest of the school year. It's possible for you to do that in this template. Now, some of you may ask, of course, what if my subject is not necessarily a part of the regular Department of Education curriculum? For example, for sectarian private schools, you may have subjects such as let's say, for example, instead of values education, you have a Christian life program, something like that. So you can enter a subject here manually, even if they're not within the choices. And then, of course, you set your assessment components percentages according to what you deem fit for your subject. So let's delete these for a moment, and then let's try doing this for a senior high school grade level. For senior high school grade levels, once you pick a senior high school grade level, for example, grade 11, you'll see here additional options. So the template is going to ask the semester. So pick a semester over here. So you may have first semester or second semester for those who are using a semestral format. Or you can have your first trimester, second trimester, or third trimester for those who have a trimestral format. So let's pick here first semester, and then you're going to be asked your subject category. So please pick a subject category. You have here either core subjects, applied track subjects for the different tracks. Then you have here your specialized subjects for particular tracks, like so. So pick a track. For example, I'm going to pick the TVL Information Communication Technology, like this. And then once you pick your subject category, the subjects for that category are all listed down here. All of them. So you can find here the list for all of the subjects offered by the Department of Education in its regular curriculum. And of course, once you pick a subject, the Department of Education required assessment components percentages will still appear here. This is the face-to-face assessment components percentages, and this part once again is the distance education assessment components percentages. And just like with the junior high school setting of the assessment components percentages, you still have to set this manually below, because once again it is very possible for you to have changing conditions between midterm and final term. It is very possible once again for you to start with the assessment components percentages of distance education during the first quarter. So you can set it for 30, 70, and 0 for the first quarter or the midterm. And then you move on to the assessment component percentages of face-to-face classes. So 20, 60, and 20 for the final term. So you'll have to set it manually down below so that you'll be able to get what you really need. And of course, once again, there may be people who are asking, what if the subject I am teaching does not appear in these lists because they are not subjects that can normally be found in the curriculum of the Department of Education for senior high school? Say for example, some sectarian schools have some sort of senior high school formation program like this kind of a subject. So you can still use this template for that particular subject. You can enter that manually here, and of course, enter manually your assessment components percentages down below. So for the sake of demonstrating this template, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm going to set the grade level to grade 10, like so. And for example, we have here the subject Social Studies. And let's say, for the sake of an example, we're going to use the distance education grading system for the first quarter. And then let's have the face-to-face grading system for the second quarter onwards. Let's assume that we're going to start our face-to-face classes starting the second quarter, and therefore we're going to start having our quarterly assessments after that. So let's proceed with the rest of the template for me to show you how the rest of the template works. So if you look at the lower left corner of your screen, we're currently at the Gen Info tab. Let's proceed to the 1Q tab over here. This is where you enter the first quarter grades or the midterm grades if you are having a senior high school grade level. The 2Q tab over here, or the 2Q sheet over here, is going to handle either the second quarter for grades 1 to 10 or final term for grades 11 and 12. 3Q is for third quarter, and 4Q is for fourth quarter for grades 1 to 10. So right now we're at the 1Q sheet, so this is where you enter your grades for the first quarter. So let me first discuss the various parts of this sheet so that you will know what to do. But before I start discussing the parts of the sheet, please don't be intimidated so much. This is not the part that you print. I know some of you may be thinking, this is what we're gonna print. This is so wasteful on ink. You have so much black here, you have orange here. This is gonna waste so much printer ink. But no, this is not the part that you print. This is simply where you enter data, but you have a separate sheet later where you print. So on the leftmost part of the template, this is the column. This part over here, this is the column where you enter the student's name. So last name, and then first name, and then middle name or middle initial if it's available. And then you have here the sexes of the students, either male or female. So please take note that the template is not going to consider a row unless it has a name and a sex. So please enter the students' names and sexes over here. Now I need you to know, my dear teachers, that this template has an auto-arranging feature. In other words, no matter how you choose to arrange the students' names and the sexes here, the template will ultimately always arrange the names based on the DepEd standard format. In other words, males first, arranged alphabetically, and then females next, arranged alphabetically. So many of you may still prefer the standard DepEd format, and therefore you may want to arrange your students accordingly. So some of you may want to arrange your students this way. So you have here your fictional student names here. So these are the males arranged alphabetically, and then these are the females arranged alphabetically. So if I jump to the printable part right here, you will notice that that is how the template arranges the names. Males first, arranged alphabetically, and then females arranged alphabetically, with their corresponding grades automatically following the names. But there are some teachers who prefer something else. For example, some teachers prefer to arrange their students alphabetically regardless of the sex of the students, so that it's easier to find names because the names are arranged alphabetically regardless of the sex. So if you want to arrange your students this way, no problem, because even if you arrange the students this way, the template is still going to automatically arrange the students according to the DepEd format, which is males first, arranged alphabetically, females first, arranged alphabetically. In fact, there may be some teachers who want to have some sort of special arrangement in their class records. Say, for example, if you are dealing with a research subject and then you have your students divided into different research groups, you may want to arrange your students that way. Say, for example, you have here your students like so, like this, and then you want to put in here group 1, and then you put in here group 2, then you put in here group 3, and then you put in here group 4. Now, no problem if this is how you want to arrange your students. Just like what I mentioned before, for as long as you have the sexes of the students to the right, you'll see here, by the way that the template has labeled the students, you will see where the numbering has started. The template is not going to consider the cell with G1 in it because you did not put a sex there. Now, even if this is how you chose to arrange the template as far as your class record is concerned, so that it's easier for you to record the scores of groups, even if this is how you arrange your class record, the template later on is still going to arrange automatically the names of the students according to the DepEd format, which is males first, arranged alphabetically, and then females next, arranged alphabetically. So once again, this template has an auto-arranging format. So say, for example, we have here now our fictional student names with their genders, and we arrange them alphabetically. Let's move on to the next part of the template. Now, the next part of the template here are these columns. So just like I mentioned a while ago, you have 20 spaces for 20 possible written works. Next part is you have here 20 spaces for 20 possible performance tasks. And then you have here 5 spaces for 5 possible quarterly assessments. Now, why are there 5 quarterly assessments? Because there are certain teachers who divide their quarterly assessments into different chunks or different parts. Say, for example, once again, for research subjects, you have the first quarterly assessment is for the paper, the second quarterly assessment is for the defense, or for immersion, you have here the written assessment, and then you have the practical assessment. That is why you have 5 different spaces. But of course, you can just use one if you just have one quarterly assessment. So, written works first, 20 spaces, performance tasks, 20 spaces, and then quarterly assessments, 5 spaces. So let's enter our first assessment here. So you have here, it says there label. So on this part, you can simply give your written work or your assessment some sort of label, something that, some mark that will help you remember what it is. It's all on you what kind of label you want. So for example, you want state work 1, or if you want, for example, quiz 2, or for example, long test 3, your choice. Now, for the next part, the template is going to ask you for the month that this particular assessment happened. So let's say January, and then let's have here, let's say, for example, January 1. Now, please note that this month and day is very important, most especially for private schools that have ESC or voucher beneficiaries. According to the Private Education Assistance Committee or PAYAC, aside from having the 2-signature rule, class records are required to have months and dates in them as far as each assessment is concerned, so that they can properly monitor if the beneficiaries are still attending your classes. So if you have ESC or voucher beneficiaries in your classroom, please make sure to have your month and your day here for each and every assessment that you have, because they are gonna check that, and that is going to appear in the class record, the printable class record later on. Next, on this space here, the one that is lightly colored, you enter the highest score possible. So say for example, in this case, the highest score possible for written work for seat work number 1 is, let's say, 20. So let's enter that there. And naturally, as many of you have already guessed, this is where you enter the score that has been earned by the student. So let's enter there. Oops, sorry. Let's enter there, random points, like so, over here. Now, please take note that this template auto-checks certain errors. Say, for example, if you, later on, if you want to adjust the total, the highest score possible from 20 to 10, just to improve the grades of the students, if you want your grades adjustment that way, if you change the items to 10, what the template is actually going to do is, you don't have to change anything else. Any grade here that is higher than 10 will automatically be converted to 10 actually. So you don't have to change this anymore. Now, one more thing that you should know is this template can actually distinguish between absences and actual zeros. So say for example, let me delete these grades over here. Say for example, the student Abby did not take seat work number 1. In other words, he was absent or was not able to pass the module, whatever the case. So he was not able to take seat work number 1. So let's say for example, Agua was able to take seat work number 1, but he scored a 0 in seat work number 1. And let's say Alger, as normal, was able to take the test or the seat work and then scored a 15. The template can actually determine which is an absence, which is a 0, and which has a score. For an absence, just leave it blank. If the student took the assessment and scored a 0, then manually place a 0 there. And then, if the student scored something, then put in the score. Because later on, when you look at the printable part of the template, just like what you see on the screen, absences are actually marked as letter A. Right? So absences are marked as letter A, and then zeros are actually marked as zeros. Using this, the teacher can easily determine which people failed because they were absent and which people failed because they're actually getting a 0. So please take note of that. Absence, blank. 0, 0. So that is how you enter your scores here. So I am going to later on copy paste scores for the performance task, quarterly assessment, and written work so that we can proceed with the other parts of the template. Next, what I've done is I have now filled up the template with sample data so that we can proceed with the next parts of the template. So I filled the template with 5 sample grades, 5 written works. So in this quarter we had 5 written works, and then we had 2 performance tasks. And then of course, this is the first quarter. Once again, we didn't have any quarter exam because this was distance education. So we have here no quarterly assessments. So if you continue scrolling to the right here, you will see here the totals. So you have here your total written works. So here are the points earned, and then the highest possible points, percentage score, weighted score. So the weighted score is calculated based on what you set a while ago as your percentage. Now, in this case, you have here your performance tasks, total points earned, highest possible score for the student, and then you have your percentage score, and then your weighted score. The quarterly assessments are blank because, once again, we didn't have any quarterly assessments. So these are their quarterly grades at a glance. Initial grade is over here, and of course, automatic transmutation of the quarterly grade here. Now that we've done the first quarter, let's assume for a moment that we are also done with the second, the third, and the fourth quarter. So I've taken the liberty to put in grades here for the second quarter. Now the sheets for the second, third, and fourth quarter work largely the same as the sheet for the first quarter. The only difference is this part here will not allow you to edit the student's name and sex. So you can see here what's written is, this cell cannot be edited. To enter new students or edit existing students, please enter or edit the students on the first quarter or 1Q sheet of this template. So this is where you're supposed to change or add names, and then the rest of the template is going to follow the names that you entered on the first quarter. So say for example, for the second quarter, you've had here 10 written works. and then you have here two for performance tasks, and then you had quarterly assessment. So because starting the second quarter, we already have quarterly assessments. Yay! So for the third quarter, we have here 6 written works, and then you have here 2 performance tasks, and then you have 2 quarterly assessments. And then for the fourth quarter, you have a whopping 20 written works, then you have 5 performance tasks. Oh, my poor dear students. And then you have here 1 quarterly assessment. So we now have grades for all 4 quarters. So let's see how it looks like when it's printed. So if you look at the lower left corner of the screen, you will see here that sheet print quarter. So please click that and we can proceed. So this is the printable quarterly class record. As I mentioned a while ago, these sheets are not what you print. This is what you print. So as written down here, this sheet is designed to be printable on A4 size paper, because I know that for most schools and for DepEd, you have A4 as your standard size. Just don't change the page layout, page margins, and print area, because in essence, you don't have to change that, because this class record template is actually ready to print with just a few clicks. Now, to use this class record or printable class record, all you actually have to do is to pick the quarter or the term if you have senior high school. So pick a quarter. Once you put in here first quarter, you will now notice that the class record has now adjusted and will now display all of the grades for the first quarter, and is going to auto arrange all of this. So once again, it is going to auto arrange the grades based on the names of the learners, and the names of the learners are arranged males first, alphabetically arranged, and then females next, alphabetically arranged. So this is the first page, and this is the second page over here. So the class record template is actually only going to display what you have. So if you only have 5 written works, it's not going to display all 20 written work blanks. It will only display 5. If you have 2 PTs, it will only display 2 PTs. It is going to arrange all of that by itself without your input. So you don't have to resize the printable area. You don't have to delete columns or add columns or hide columns. You just have to set the quarter and then you print. So this part of the template right here, you will see here my mouse cursor, active pages. So it says there active pages too. So what you need to do is you go to the print settings, so Control P, and then because it says there page 2 active pages, all you have to do is to set the active sheets, to print the active sheets pages 1 to 2, because that's all you actually have to print. So this is how it looks like, and you will see once again from pages 1 to 2, only the grades that you need to print are displayed there. So right now we're at the first quarter. What about the second quarter? So let's pick in here second quarter, and you will notice once again the template has now auto adjusted the second quarter. So 2 active pages like so. What about the third quarter? Picking so, still 2 active pages. Let's see how it looks like. Still auto adjusting. And then what about the fourth quarter? Remember, the fourth quarter has 20 written works. So what has the template done? 3 active pages. Once again, auto arranging for you. Enough space for 20 written works and still auto adjusting for you. Once again, no more formatting, no more resizing, no more adding, deleting, or hiding columns. Just print. Once again, for private schools that have voucher beneficiaries or ESE beneficiaries, this is how the template is compatible, or rather compliant, with the guidelines of the PAYAC. So you have here the dates of each assessment. You will see here June 4, this is June 5, this is June 6. You have here the dates of each and every assessment. And at the bottom of the pages, you have here spaces for the signatories. Once again, they have what we know as the 2 signature rule. So you have here space for the 2 signatories. Now, I don't think you have to sign all of the pages. So we have here 3 active pages. I don't think you have to sign all 3 pages. As far as I know, either only the first page or only the last page needs to be printed. Your choice. Now, for those dear teachers who are from the private school who choose to use this class record template, please take note that the printable quarterly class record part, these logos are actually movable, deletable. Right? You can actually delete these logos. So what you can do is you can move these logos somewhere, like so, like this. You can move those logos somewhere else, or you can delete them entirely and then add in the logo of your school. Right? So just be sure to remember that you're supposed to add the logos for all 16 possible pages for this particular template. So these logos are easily movable and easily printable. And in fact, you can, if you want to, you can actually add in virtual signatures for these signatories over here at the bottom. Next, if you look at the lower left corner once again, it says their print final. That is the class record which combines the 4 quarters or the 2 terms of the school year or the semester, and then you average the grades of each quarter to get the final grade of the subject. So let's click that and you get to this sheet over here. So once again, this sheet is an instant print format. So this is automatically formatted for you. So we have here 1 active page. So you print this, you only need 1 page. You have here once again the names of the students arranged automatically, males first, arranged alphabetically, females next, arranged alphabetically. You have here their grades for all of the 4 quarters, and then their final grades, and then of course the final remarks whether they passed or failed the subjects. Once again, for those who, for private schools who have ESC beneficiaries or voucher beneficiaries, you have here the 2 spaces for the 2 signatories following the 2 signature rule of PAYAC. And of course, before I forget, just like what's written up here, this sheet is designed to be printable on A4 size paper. Just don't change the page layout, page margins, and print area. In fact, you don't have to. You just put it in this sheet and then you print. So this is what it's going to look like when you print this on A4 sheet of paper. For our fellow teachers from the private schools who may choose to use this template, just like the printable quarterly grading sheets, the logos that you see here are actually movable and they're actually deletable. And you can add in the logo from your school. And just like the other sheet, you can insert virtual signatures here, the signatories, if you so wish. So the next feature of this template is the individual display, and I hope that teachers will like it because it's very, very helpful. To go to the individual display, all you have to do is to click here on the individual display sheet on the lower left corner of your screen. This is the individual grades display sheet. So you will see here at a glance what the student has been up to for the school year. So you have here spaces for the student, you have the name of the subject, the name of the teacher, then you have here quarter term, and for senior high school students, you have here the semester right here. So what you need to do is, you first pick a quarter or a term, for example, first quarter, and then pick by drop-down box any of your students and watch the magic happen like this. So what this part of the template does is, at a glance, you can see the standing of the students for one particular quarter. So you see here instantly what are the students' written works, what are the students' performance tasks. Once again, first quarter, no quarterly assessment, so that's blank over there. And then these are the grades of the students, for the student rather, for all 4 quarters, but this is the first quarter initial grade and first quarter transmitted grade over here. So if you pick second quarter, you move on to the second quarter like so, third quarter like so, and then fourth quarter like so. So you have here the grades of each individual student. Let's pick another student right here or another student right here. So those are the grades of the students. Again, you can see them all at a glance. So what are you going to use this for? Well, there are 2 practical applications of this part of the template. First, if you are talking to students' parents, you don't have to print lots and lots of papers and then show the papers to the parents trying to hide the names and the grades of other students just to show them one particular student or their particular child. All you will have to do is to bring your laptop during the parents-teacher conference, and then you put it on this screen and then pick the name of their child, pick the quarter, like so, and then turn the screen of the laptop and then start talking to the student, to the parent rather, while pointing to your screen, because everything is here already and you maintain the privacy of all of the other students. This is also helpful if you want to talk to the students themselves about the standing of their grades. It's all in here. One other practical application of this part of the template is of course during deliberations. Now when you're talking to your other fellow teachers regarding the standing of your students, at least you have at a glance contains the data that you need for you to make your decision. So this is going to be very helpful for deliberations. Now, the next part of the template is the assessment info part, which shows statistical tools. So to go there, all you have to do is to look at the lower left corner of the screen and click assessment info. So this is the assessment information sheet. So all you will have to do is to pick a quarter or a term like this. For example, I'm going to pick here first quarter, and then you pick an activity. So pick any activity. So written works from 1 to 20, or performance tasks from 1 to 20, or any of the quarterly assessments, or the total written works, total performance tasks, or total quarterly assessments. And then you can also have the quarter or term grade itself. So let's pick a sample here. Let's say, for example, performance task 1, and let's see what happens. So once you pick a quarter and then you pick a specific assessment, you will see the wealth of data that is now available to you. So you will see here, first, the date of the activity, the highest possible score in this particular performance task. Then you have here the number of males in your class, the number of females in your class, the total students you have, and then the number of passed, males who passed, females who passed, totals that passed, and then the passing percentage. Males that failed, females that failed, total that failed, failing percentage, how many absent, and how many exempted. We'll talk about exemptions later. Then you have here your highest, lowest, mean, and standard deviation raw scores. You have here your highest, lowest, mean, and standard deviation percentage scores. And finally, you have here the ranking of the students according to your selected activity. So these are the scores of the students arranged by rank for performance task 1. So they are arranged by rank according to 4 kinds of ranking: standard rank, dense rank, fractional rank, and percentile rank. So there are many applications of this particular part of the template. Of course, data regarding our assessments are always very, very helpful for us to be able to improve our teaching capabilities. But at the same time, some practical applications would be some data for action research. You may need this data for certain kinds of action research. At the same time, this data is also very important for certain end of school year requirements. Now, for those who are doing the mean percentage score calculations, the data that you need for MPS calculations are actually all here on the screen. For example, the total cases would be total passed plus total failed. So adding these two will be total cases. Then you already have here highest, lowest, mean, and standard deviation raw scores here. This is highest percentage score, lowest percentage score, mean percentage score, or the MPS, and the percentage score standard deviation over here. So everything is already here, including, of course, the ranking of the students, once again, in standard, dense, fractional, and percentile ranking. So all of that neatly arranged. Now, so far, we've shown what the template can do during normal schooling conditions. Now let's talk about what the template can do during uncommon schooling conditions. Let's talk about transferees and dropouts. So on the screen right now, we are currently in the first quarter. So let's say, for example, that this student here, Augustine, over here, Augustine, Joe, Chris, Merv, right here, only entered our school during the second quarter. So the student, Augustine, has second quarter grades. Over here, he has second quarter grades. He also has third quarter grades, and he has fourth quarter grades. However, once again, because he only entered our school during the second quarter, he doesn't have any first quarter grades. So if you look at the final grades right here, naturally, Augustine does not have any first quarter grades, and then he failed. So he failed. So how do we enter grades for Augustine during the first quarter? It's actually very, very simple. All you will have to do is to scroll to the right on the first quarter screen. So you're here on the first quarter sheet. So this is Augustine right here. Scroll to the right part of the template, and then you will see here columns for quarterly grades for transferred in. So what a teacher should do is you check the card or you check the grades of the student from the previous school. So from the previous school, for example, Augustine came from another school, finished the first quarter in another school, and for his grades here, let's say, for example, he got an 85 during his previous school during the previous quarter. So once you enter here 85, you will notice that the template has already changed, has made the changes. So the template now recognizes, once you put in here a grade for transferred in, the template recognizes the student is now a transferee. The student has essentially transferred in. So the template automatically marks the student as a transferee and has given him a transmuted grade of 85 according to what you gave him. So this carries over, this change for transferred in carries over to the printable part. So you will see here, during the first quarter, right here, Augustine, which is right here, this is Augustine here, has blanks for the first quarter, but is considered transferred in during the first quarter. And you will also see here, in the final sheet, Agustin now has a grade for the first quarter, but still failed. But at the very least, you see now that this template, even when the student lacks a grade for one quarter because of transferring, you can still input that grade by inputting the grade in this column of the grading sheet. So what about people who are transferring out? So say for example, Beverly over here, this student here, Beverly, right here, this student was with us during the first quarter of the school year over here. But let's say, for example, starting during the second quarter, Beverly no longer finished schooling during the second quarter all the way to the fourth quarter. This student essentially transferred out. So how do we mark that in our template? It's actually very easy. So just like what I said in the example, Beverly finished the first quarter with us. So first quarter grades, no problem. But starting the second quarter, he is no longer with the school. So therefore, all you have to do is to, starting the second quarter, you scroll to the right here, and then you will see here on the rightmost column, it says there enrollment status. So let me move my face. Oops, let me move my face for a while so that you can see. Now, as far as Beverly is concerned, all you will have to do is to click on the enrollment status for Beverly and then change his activity. So all you have to do is to change it to transferred out like this. The moment you click transferred out, you will notice that the template has now essentially adjusted. So the student is now marked as transferred out. So do this for the second quarter and then do this for the third quarter. Like so. Did I mark the correct student? Yes, I did. And then do this for the fourth quarter. Like so. So once you mark the student as transferred out on these grading sheets, what's essentially going to happen is the change is going to carry over to the succeeding sheets over here. So Beverly is already blanked here because Beverly has essentially transferred out. And of course, when it comes to the printable final grades sheet, Beverly is now marked as transferred out starting in the second quarter. So that is how you deal with students who have transferred out. So here's the next case. Very unfortunate case, but it happens sometimes. What if a student dropped out? In other words, a student is no longer participating in school activities. Say for example, for this case, we have both right. So both right, in this case, this student here, this student has been going to school during the first quarter and during the second quarter, but has stopped schooling during the third quarter. So what are we gonna do with him? Actually, it's easy. You do the same procedure as with the student that transferred out. So starting the third quarter, because that's where the student dropped out. The third quarter, once again, you scroll to the right, and instead of marking the student as transferred out, you mark the student as NLPA, short for no longer participating in school activities. So mark that as NLPA, and once again, you will notice that the template has now adjusted accordingly. Fourth quarter should also be marked as NLPA, because the student is of course no longer with us during the fourth quarter, like so. And then of course, once you change it here, the printable quarterly grading sheet is going to adjust accordingly. Let me just show you. Third quarter, both right, is no longer showing entries and is now marked as NLPA right here. And in the final grading sheet, the student is also marked as NLPA over there. So that is how we deal with students who have dropped out. Now, the next part of this template is going to talk about extraordinary circumstances that can happen during this school year. What we have right now is a very, very difficult school year. It's a very different school year, and it's a very unstable school year. We just don't know what's going to happen, and extraordinary circumstances may occur. I'll give you one such example of an extraordinary circumstance. What if the school needs to suddenly change the grading system? Here's an example of a circumstance that may happen. Say that we start our face-to-face classes during November 2, during the second quarter as planned by the government. So after 1 quarter of classes, during the third quarter, all of a sudden, the sicknesses or the cases of our pandemic starts rising up. So if it starts rising up, let's say for example, the city government of your local area starts calling for an emergency and starts locking down, right? Now, if that happens, if your city or your place, or it may be ordered, of course, by your school head or by your superintendent, whoever is in charge, if a lockdown suddenly occurs, it can happen that certain parts of the grading may be impossible to perform, such as school plays or performance tasks or even quarterly exams. So in this example, let's say for example, during the third quarter, we were supposed to have an exam, but it was cancelled. Not postponed, but rather cancelled. What are we going to do if a particular component is suddenly cancelled? It is actually very easy to deal with that with this particular class record template. Now, I'd like to remind you that this particular class record template has manual adjustable assessment component percentages. So just like what I mentioned in my example a while ago, during the first quarter, we had distance education first quarter. And then during the second quarter, we had a healthy face-to-face classes, so we had our quarterly exam. But what if, because of rising number of cases and a rising alert level and a sudden change in the policies of your particular local area, what if we suddenly had to cancel, not postpone, cancel quarterly assessments? So it is easy to change by simply changing the grading system. So you can simply change the grading system right here. You can change it back to the distance education grading system. So change it back to 60 written works and 40% performance tasks, and then 0 quarterly assessments. You can easily change it here. And if you change it here, it will affect and it will change the way that the rest of the template calculates grades. In fact, you can see here, because we changed the third quarter grading here, when we go back to the third quarter grading sheet, quarterly assessments have now been reduced to 0, and the rest of the calculations of the template has now adjusted accordingly. So with this template, the teacher can very, very easily respond to sudden changes in grading systems if in case the situation calls for it. Now, if we have sudden responses that will affect all of our students, well, that's easy to deal with. But what if we need to do responses but will affect only particular students? A while ago, we were talking about changes in the macro level, but what about changes in the micro level? What about dealing with special cases for particular students? So here is a particular case that may happen to your particular school. So what we have here on the screen right now are the grades of student number 1 for his written work. So you have here written work number 1, 10 over 10, written work 2, 5 over 15, written work 3, etc., etc. So you have here his grades. So you add your number of items, 100, add the points earned, 67. So the percentage score for written works is 67%. Next, we have here student 2. So student 2 has, of course, the same written works 1, 2, 3, and 4, but of course, earned different points during those written works. But what if the student missed written work number 5 due to unforeseen circumstances? There may be a lot of things that could have happened to student 2 for missing written work number 5. For example, the student may have gotten sick, and it may be impossible and unfair for him to have to take written work number 5 due to being sick due to unforeseen circumstances. Or student number 2 may be living in an area outside the city, and their place or their municipality or their city might suddenly have a lockdown, making it impossible for student 2 to take written work number 5. That can happen. So of course, there are many ways to deal with a situation like this. The most obvious way of dealing with a situation is to simply wait for the student to be available. You wait for the student to be available, then the student takes a makeup test for written work number 5, and then the student proceeds with his grading as planned. However, what if the school has suddenly decided that we're not going to postpone written work number 5, Instead, we're going to cancel written work number 5 of just student 2. In other words, what if we're going to exempt student 2 from taking written work number 5? So of course, during exemptions, the way that exemptions are dealt with will vary from school to school, from case to case. There are certain schools which will simply give the student a perfect score. There are certain schools which will give the student a passing score. But what I am about to propose and what this template can do is actually give an exemption, do an exemption that will give a fair grade. Now, fair warning, the exemption features of this template is not found on any DepEd order, alright? It's not found on any DepEd order, it's not ordered by the DepEd, it's not sanctioned by the DepEd, but I believe that it is the most fair way of dealing with exemptions of particular assessments, and I'm going to show you how the template deals with exemptions. So how does this template deal with exemptions? Well, you can see the difference in calculation between the student on the left and the student on the right. So on the student on the left, you will see here that you have here the full marks of all 5 written works. 10 plus 15 plus 25 plus 20 plus 30 is equal to 100 total highest possible score. And these are the scores of the students. Student 67 over 100, 67%. But for student 2, because written work number 5 is exempted, we do not add this to the total written work. Because the only written works that he took has a total of 70 points, that is that student's total written work. Only 70 points. So you add all of this, becomes 70, and then what the student got is 47. So the total written work for this student is 47 over 70. So therefore, you have a different total written work for student 1 and a different total written work for student 2 because the student 2 was exempted from written work number 5. So you have here the percentage score of 67.14. And again, I believe that this is the most fair way of dealing with student exemptions. You deal with it by simply removing the written work that is exempted from calculation. So we're back here at the first quarter part of the grading sheet. So let's say, for example, you have here the student Abby. Student Abby over here has missed his 5th written work right here, which has a total of 25 points. Now, say for example, we're not going to wait for Abby to take this written work. In fact, we're going to exempt Abby from this written work due to unforeseen circumstances. So how do you exempt Abby? This is how you do it in the template. You give him a negative score. Again, you give him a negative score. Once you give Abby a negative score here, the template will recognize that as a signal for exemption. So let's put in here a negative score. Let's put in here -1, like this. You will notice the template accepts -1. You are not able to see the effect over here in your class record. But if you scroll to the right, let me blow that up a little bit so it's easier to see. If you scroll to the right, you will see the effect of the exemption in the earned and highest possible score. You will notice that the classmates of Abby has the highest possible grade of 75 on their performance on their written works. But because Abby has been exempted from the final written work, he only has a highest possible score of 50. And because his points earned is 25, highest possible is 50, percentage score is 50. So you have a fair way of exempting a student from particular assessments using the exemption features of the Minerva class record template. And once again, how do you do it? To exempt a student from an assessment, you give him a negative score. Now, student exemptions can actually be seen on the other parts of the class record template. In fact, if I go here to the printable part of the class record template, so here the first quarter, you will see this is Abby over here during the first quarter. His exemption has now been marked with a very, very clear indicator of exempted. That is so that, of course, your principal or your coordinators know that Abby has been exempted from this particular written work. It will also appear in the individual display right here. If I pick Abby right here, exemption is appearing on his written work. And of course, in the assessment info, as exemption will also be, any exemptions will also be excluded. It will also be excluded from the ranking and from the calculation. So you will see the exemption counter has already ticked by 1, and then the exemption is written here on the very bottom part of the ranking, which is of course an indication that this is not part of the ranking. So that is how this template deals with student exemptions. And once again, how do you do it? You give the student a negative score. Now here's another example of a situation that may happen to a student of your school. Now, we have here sample grades of a particular student. So you have here the written work grades. So you have total written work, percentage score, the weight, which is 30%. Written work is 30%. So 30 divided by the total numbers of the total weights, the total components of the three components. So 30 plus 50 plus 20 is equal to 100. That is why it says there 30 over 100. So percentage score times 30 divided by 100, weighted percentage score is 20.10. So you have here performance tasks and you have here quarterly assessments. So after you calculate all of this, initial grade is 78.10, transmuted is 86. Now, on the screen, you have here, for some circumstance or for some reason, performance task number 2 has been exempted. So we already know what's going to happen or how the template is going to calculate the exemption once you have an exemption. So we'll see here, 25 is now the total performance task. Over here, 20 over 25. So the grade has been adjusted. So because performance task 2 is exempted, and the rest of the calculations will continue as follows. So that is why the initial grade is now 78.10 and the transmitted grade is already 86. But what if what you can see on the screen suddenly happens to a particular student? You have here both performance tasks exempted. This can happen, and once again, because we're living in very difficult times, we're living in very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. We just don't know this might happen, that we might exempt a student from both performance tasks, and therefore the student does not have a written work, a performance task grade. Like for example, if the performance task was supposed to be some sort of conference or some sort of a speech or some sort of dance right after their quarterly assessment, and all of a sudden there's a lockdown, so therefore the student cannot perform both his performance tasks. What are we going to do then? How is the template going to adjust, or can the template adjust? Yes, it can, and let me show you how. Now, what's going to happen is, when both performance tasks are exempted and, the whole performance task component is exempted, the student rather is exempted from the whole performance task component, what the template is also actually going to do is, the template is going to adjust the rest of the component weights and is going to proportionally distribute the grades according to the weights of the remaining component assessments. So in other words, what's going to happen is, because written works is 30% and quarterly assessment was set as 20%, you will see here on the weight part, because the sum of written works and quarterly assessments, 30 plus 20, is only 50. So that means the weight of performance task is no longer 30 over 100. It's not 30%. It instead becomes 30 over 50. Or this means it becomes 60%. Quarterly assessment has turned from 20 over 100, 20%, into now 20 over 50, because that's what's left of the grade. 20 over 50 is essentially 40%. So you will see here, the template can adjust to multiple exemptions even if the whole component is exempted. Again, this is so that we can give a fair grade to a student who, for some reason, especially in these difficult times that we have right now, cannot take a particular assessment. So after calculating these grades, and in fact, you can pause this video right now and do the calculations yourself, the end of the calculation here is going to be a result of 76.2 in terms of initial grade and an 85 for the transmuted grade. Here's another example. What if the quarterly assessment itself is exempted just for one particular student? Well, just like we mentioned a while ago, if the quarterly assessment is exempted, then this whole component is taken out for that particular student. So for that particular student, what's going to happen is, because written works and performance tasks is what's remaining, the weights will adjust. So therefore, the weight for the written work for this particular student is no longer 30 over 100, it's going to be 30 over 80, because 80 is the sum of the remaining component percentages that we have here on the grading system of this particular child. So the weight is 30 over 80, and for performance task, the weight is going to be 50 over 80. So once again, what the template is going to do is, it's going to proportionally distribute the remaining component weights if you remove one of the components. So the end calculation of this all is going to be an initial grade of 75.13 with a transmitted grade of 84. Again, the template can very easily adjust to student exemptions even if you remove a whole component from the grading. So once again, we're currently at the grading sheet. So you can see here we're at the second quarter, and once again, how do we perform, or how do we give a student exemptions? We give them a negative grade. So let's say, for example, let's have Agua over here. And let's say, for example, for both performance tasks for the second quarter, we gave him exemption. So that is why we have here grades of -1 for both performance tasks. If we scroll to the right now, you will see that the whole performance task component has now been exempted. And because the whole performance task component has been exempted, you will see that the grade has adjusted accordingly. So weighted score has adjusted to 40.8. Weighted score for the quarterly assessment as well has adjusted, and you have here a passing quarterly grade despite not having performance tasks. Or say, for example, you have another student, let's say Alger is going to be exempted from the quarter exam, or let's have here Bagley, for example, is going to be exempted from the quarter exam. So let's put a negative grade, -1 over here. So that's the only quarterly exam that they have. Now, we have here an exemption over here, and the rest of the grade is going to adjust accordingly. So this adjustment will also appear in the printable sheet. So say, for example, you have the second quarter. So Agua is exempted from both performance tasks, and that is why it shows up here that the performance task for Agua is exempted. For the case of Bagley, the quarterly assessments, all of it has now been marked as exempted. So you see here that with this template, you are easily able to exempt students if in case the situation calls for it. And how do you do it? Once again, you give the student a negative grade. One other handy thing about having student exemptions is the ability for you to customize certain assessments so that you can fit in students with special needs. So say, for example, you have here a written work, or rather, let's not pick a written work. Let's have your performance task, for example. Performance task number 2. Say performance task number 2 with a total of 55 points. Let's say that this performance task is a speaking kind of a performance task. It asks the students to perform a speech in public. But let's say, for example, that Blakesley over here, this particular student, Blakesley, has been diagnosed. Let's remove his grade for a while. Let's say that Blakesley, for example, has been diagnosed with social anxiety and selective mutism, and therefore has been exempted from doing the performance task. And let's say, for example, the teacher has chosen to give him written work or some sort of written activity instead of speaking in public. So what can you do here? Let's say, for example, for Blakesley, his activity is going to be 30 points worth, and then it's going to be performed on May 27 in his case. So what you can do in this case is, so that you do not affect the grade of everybody by adding another performance task, what you can do is give Blakesley an exemption during the second performance task, like what I did over here, because Blakesley is not going to speak in public, so therefore is exempted in performance task 2. But you give him a special performance task. Let's say, for example, he scored a 25 in the third performance task. And because only Blakesley is supposed to perform performance task 3, that means everybody else, aside from Blakesley, is exempted from performance task 3 because, of course, only Blakesley is supposed to take that. So this is what happens then. So everybody else has performance task 2 except Blakesley, and only Blakesley has performance task 3 because everybody else is exempted. So when you look at the way that the template will then calculate this, Blakesley over here has a different total score for his performance task compared to all of his other classmates. And you can actually see this reflected in the printable quarterly class record for the third quarter. Performance task 2, he is exempted, the student is exempted, and for performance task 3, everybody else is exempted but him. So with this class record, you can use exemptions to cater to the needs of students with special needs, so that you can give them special work that nobody else will take depending on the situation. But once again, my dear teachers, I'd like to remind you that these policies, or rather these features of student exemption done by the template, once again, is not endorsed by the Department of Education. It is not found in any DepEd order. This calculation is offered as an alternative to teachers whenever they need to deal with changing conditions for this school year. But it is not something that's official. So before you perform any exemption procedure on any students, talk to your administrators first. Talk to your principal, talk to your coordinator, talk to whoever. Tell them that this is what you plan to do, and tell them that the template can handle it. Once you explain to them how it's calculated, and if they say yes, then you can perform the operation. And once again, if you choose to perform the operation in the template, it's very, very quickly and easily done using this Minerva class record template. So that, my dear fellow teachers, is the Minerva class record template. So once again, this is Carlo Excels, a channel that is dedicated to teaching my fellow teachers here in the Philippines Microsoft Excel. If you like what you see, please like this video and share this video to your fellow teachers, and drop a comment down below. It'll really help with the YouTube algorithm and help those who are searching for this to find this, and it'll really support the channel as well. Thank you in advance. So that's it for this presentation on the Minerva class record template. I really hope I earned your subscription today. Once again, I am Carlo, and this is Carlo Excels. Thank you very much for watching.